We've been hearing in the previous days about the way the Prophet ﷺ has dealt with different groups of people. Specifically, we talked about the beautiful relationships the Prophet ﷺ had with his wives, his spouses. And we saw how the Prophet ﷺ had the perfect mix of character, how the Prophet ﷺ had the characteristic of joking around with his wives, of playing around with them, of having fun with them. At the same time, he also had the aspect of if any sort of thing went wrong, he had a very forbearing nature and he forgave and overlooked things. At the same time, there were also limits, and we talked about how the Prophet ﷺ, at certain times, he drew lines so that his wives would know that this is something that should not repeat again. And at the same time, the Prophet ﷺ, he taught the wives of the Prophet ﷺ how they should be in terms of their deen, and he inculcated different aspects of deen into their lives. And so we mentioned many different examples of that, and how the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, they became the greatest example for the women and for us in general, for mankind in general. Then we talked about the way the Prophet ﷺ dealt with his children. Again, how he showed them so much respect and honor, which is something which is more so needed in today's society, because unfortunately sometimes due to the way we treat our children, with lack of respect and without having that connection between us and the children, this ends up driving them away from Islam, because they feel like Islam is a religion that is devoid of love and compassion, when this cannot be further from the truth, as we look at the life of the Prophet ﷺ and the way he dealt with his children, the way he used to stand up for Fatima radiallahu anha, who was his last remaining daughter, and he used to kiss her and he used to hold her hand and sit her down, showing that respect and showing that love for her, and recognizing the fact that she is the last remaining sibling and her mother has passed away, and so giving her that honor despite the fact that he is a Prophet of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam. And similarly, the way he dealt with Hussein radiallahu anh, Hassan radiallahu anh, his respected grandchildren, and how he was very humble towards them, how he had them ride on his back, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, again showing his character and humility. At the same time, we also mentioned incidents of how he also inculcated the deen into their lives. And from amongst those is even when Hassan and Hussein radiallahu anh, remember they were very young when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away. So we don't have many incidences with regards to their deen, but this is one thing, even though they were very small, one time one of the two, they swallowed a date that was meant to be for sadaqah. So immediately the Prophet ﷺ had them take it out, and he said, this is something that we do not do. We do not eat from the food of sadaqah, because we know that the Prophet ﷺ did not, it was impermissible for them to eat from sadaqah, from charity. And so immediately he had him throw out that date and take that out of their mouth. Again, this is part of that raising of the children, tarbiyah, in terms of their deen. Even when they're so small, right, little toddlers, yet the Prophet ﷺ is teaching them this. So the children are never too young for us to start teaching them the Islamic manners and teaching them with regards to the deen. Many times we underestimate the children. We think that, they're still young now, let them do whatever they want. Once they get older, then we'll start to tell them what to do and what not to do. But this cannot be further from the truth. When you start teaching them at such a young age, that's how you build and you basically set their way for their entire life, right? You set them on a path and on a trend, and they will follow that trend for the rest of their life. And so again, this is what the Prophet ﷺ is teaching us through his characteristics and the way he raised his children as well. And in general, we spoke about how even with other children, besides those who are direct descendants of his, right? For example, we talked about how he dealt with the little child Abu Umair that was from Medina, that unfortunately he lost his little bird, and how he was so saddened by it. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he cheered him up, and he used some rhyming words, and he specifically asked him what happened to your little bird, right? Again, it may seem very trivial and unimportant to us, right? And the Prophet ﷺ, again, is the most important person, yet he is going out of his way to ask the little child, what happened to your little birdie? Is everything okay with him? So again, looking at how the Prophet ﷺ dealt with children. There's another narration I didn't mention, in which the Prophet ﷺ, it was mentioned about him that the Prophet ﷺ was so easygoing and easy to, basically, especially when it comes to children, he was so easygoing that any small little baby child, a little girl, could come and hold his hand and take him to wherever she wished in Medina. You know how sometimes little children, they just want you to do, they just want to take you somewhere. They don't even know where they're going. They just hold your hand and say, oh, they just point in some direction. And then, with us, we're just like, yeah, this kid doesn't know what he's doing. Just let him go. I have more important things to do. But the Prophet ﷺ was so easygoing that he would literally go and play along with the child, like, oh, what's over there? Oh, okay. And then he would go and follow the child. And that was the beautiful and amazing character of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. It was also even said about him, even though it's not about children, but again, just showing how easygoing he was, how humble he was, that again, there was somebody in Medina who she had a mental problem. It was known that she had a mental problem. Yet despite this, and she just asked the Prophet ﷺ, I have this such and such need. Can I talk to you for a moment? And she took so much time from the Prophet ﷺ, yet the Prophet ﷺ still went out of his way to listen to her needs and to listen to what she had to say. Again, for us, unfortunately, we see anybody with some sort of special needs, and we think that, whatever, these people are like, there's no importance, na'udhu billah, right? Not realizing that these are creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created them in a specific way. It does not mean that we should feel that we are better than them. They can be much better than us. They can have a much higher status in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than us. And so this is why the Prophet ﷺ even gave these people importance, who nobody, especially in that society. Nowadays, you have a little bit more awareness about people talking about special needs and things like that, even using specific words for them. Back then, there was nothing like that. Yet the Prophet ﷺ, as we can say, he was ahead of his time, and he was, again, this is an idea that also we have to take out of our minds, that we feel like society is becoming more and more moral as we progress, right? Whereas the actual reality is that the most moral society has ever been is during the time of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ was the most moral person ever existed from mankind. And we believe that society is just generally degenerating from then onwards. Yes, there may be some improvements going up and down, but it will never reach that level that it was in the time of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, simply because he was the best human being ever stepped on the face of earth, and he was the best example for mankind. And so it behooves us to look and learn about his life. I've been reading from this book, كيف عاملهم, how did the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ deal with these different types of people? And so we should try to also read this. Again, I'm skipping so many different things because we have very limited amount of time in these sessions after Fajr. So I'm just picking and choosing specific incidences just to give a little taste of how the Prophet ﷺ dealt with different people. But it is, every single one of us should take it out of time out of his day and read the way the Prophet ﷺ dealt with these different people. So there is a translation of this available. If any of you are on the WhatsApp group that we have for the masjid, inshallah, I will be posting the link for that translation, so you can read along yourself and follow along. I will actually be traveling today, so I won't be here for the next week or so. So we won't be continuing these sessions, which is why I kind of gave a overall summary of what we've gone over so far. And inshallah, maybe we will continue this after the month of Ramadan, once a week or something, Sundays after Isha. Nothing confirmed yet, but something that we're considering the fact that there's so much that we didn't cover from this book. And so maybe we will consider doing that after the month of Ramadan. But hopefully, inshallah, these sessions gave us a taste of how the Prophet ﷺ dealt with different types of people, and encouraged us and motivated us and helped us realize that our dealings with people are very much deficient, and their need of rectification, and we need to fix ourselves and the way we deal with people, and we need to learn the life of Rasulullah ﷺ so that we can emulate. So many things, so many misconceptions are put away when we read about the life of Rasulullah ﷺ. And so we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to make Rasulullah ﷺ our role model, and to make our character like the character of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us all tawfiq, wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.